Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Sunday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. On today's show, we asked the question, who is Superman as a character, and is putting him in the hands of a progressive writer, director like James Gunn, the best of ideas. Then we talk about Todd Phillips' Joker sequel, Joker Folly Ado, that now has a working title. It's called Juliet. Coincidentally, the first film, the Joker movie, had the working title of Romeo. So I will discuss how I love Todd Phillips as a writer-director, how he doesn't allow his political views to taint what he's making, and I'll be discussing how I'm not a political person and how I don't believe in this system, but I do believe kind of people on the right, even though I definitely disagree more with the right than I do with the left, they never let their political views taint their storytelling. Because, let's be honest, how many anti-abortion films have you seen? We'll be talking about Todd Phillips and all of that, because I do suspect that he's a Republican. It shouldn't matter what your political views are and who you vote for in the ballot box, but it does in the entertainment industry today, and that's a shame. So let's ask the question, who is Superman? Siegel and Schuster modelled Superman on the old-fashioned gentleman. Clark Kent, Superman, will say, yes ma'am, yes sir. He'll hold a door open for a woman. He'll stand up when a woman walks into the room. He's an old-fashioned American, if you like. Now, this kind of good man is offensive to the extreme left today. So, yes, James Gunn is a progressive. What is a progressive? Extreme left, SJW, or if you want to call him woke, you can call him woke. It's a shame that word has been tainted today, because woke used to mean good, that you were on the right side, that you cared about people, that you were a person of charity. That's what, that's not what woke means today, and that's a shame. And I really don't like using that word in a derogative term, because it just makes you sound like a pie eater. So I don't like using that word. But anyway, James Gunn is a progressive. James Gunn isn't much of a Superman fan. He's refused on multiple occasions to make a Superman movie. All of a sudden, as co-chair of DC Studios, he's in charge of shaping the future of Superman. And that worries me. Don't get me wrong. James Gunn is a very capable writer-director, but he normally writes straight white males as babbling fools. Look at the evidence in the Suicide Squad. Actually, even Bloodsport, who's a gentleman of colour, he writes him as very aggressive, a very toxic, and a bad dad. He loves writing straight guys as bad dads. He's obsessed with it. In fact, the only kind of alpha I've ever seen him write to a point is Peter Quill. I think the rest of the males he writes are babbling fools. Or if you want, beta males. That's another term I really don't like, because you can be a beta male, you can be an alpha male. As far as I'm concerned, you can be anything you like. It's up to you. It's within your personality. So you've got a character like Superman, who is the distinction of the good man. Well, the only way a progressive like James Gunn will stick to the values that Superman has had since 1938, if he casts an African-American actor or a Latino or even an Asian actor as Superman, because he ain't going to represent no straight white male as a good person, as a good man, because it's not within their belief system. So even though I rate James Gunn as a really stable, good writer-director, and can certainly make entertaining fare. I did like what he did with Peacemaker, but his progressive messaging is all over the shop, and it's there. You don't even have to look that deeply. He explains in his director commentary of the Suicide Squad that Bloodsport and Peacemaker are the example of toxic masculinity. The only thing I would say in a positive note with what James does with toxic masculinity, he just try and redeem toxic masculinity. He does try and make them learn lessons and become better people. That's the one thing I like. But that's not what I want to see from my Superman. My Superman was brought up by Jonathan and Martha Kent, the salt of the earth, with Midwestern values. Those Midwestern values are taught to Clark as a young boy. All you have to do is read the comics. All you have to do is read the old Superboy annuals from the 60s. And all you have to do is watch the Smallville television show. He's taught these values of what it is to be a good person. Now, the Kents, if you like, are very patriotic. That's not something that progressives believe today. Progressives believe patriotism is the same as being a Nazi or a racist. That's how they feel. They are extremists. That's why they're the extreme left. You're either one thing or the other. And that's the problem we're living in with today, because basically the industry has become so ultra political, and it's dividing audiences instead of uniting them. So when they say subverting expectations, which is a term I first heard with Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi, this means let's wind them up. Let's shave against the grain instead of with the grain. Let's annoy them, because then they'll talk about it. Look what happened with BVS. That was trending online for all the wrong reasons. But as Zack Snyder said, no publicity is bad publicity. He says he likes people talking shit about his movies because at least they're still talking about them. Basically, this is the modern filmmaker's mentality. Dividing audiences. I love BVS. I love Zack. But this is the modern, new kids on the blocks, filmmakers and creatives in television. Look at, is it Mindy Kaling's, or however you say her name, Velma, that's upsetting people. It doesn't upset me. I've seen the clips, I've seen the trailer. It doesn't look like something I want to consume. I won't be consuming it. I'll be watching my old Scooby-Doo box sets, thank you very much, and that's the end of that. I don't have to go on Rotten Tomatoes and say anything about it. I don't need to talk about it any further. It's the example of the lunatics taking over the asylum when you see things like The Last Jedi or Velma. So you ignore it. That's what I do. I ignore it. I don't get involved with the conversations. Oh yeah, I'll throw a laughing emoji here and there on Twitter. And when I throw a laughing emoji on Twitter, that's me pretty much posting a monologue, right? But instead of me getting involved with the toxicity, I just throw a laughing emoji, because this era of humanity, and especially this industry, it's just a piece of shit. We live in very sad, negative, divisive times. And we've seen this with the Snyderverse. We've seen this with DC as a whole. It all divides people. Superman the movie united people in 1978. It didn't divide people. Why did Superman the movie, basically unite people instead of dividing them? First of all, there was no internet back then. There was whatever the progressives today will tell you, whatever Gen Z will tell you about past generations, past centuries and decades, that people were this and that and problematic. The difference between those people, they had an innocence to them. When they did wrong, most of the time, they didn't know they were doing wrong. What's this generation's excuse? This generation is supposed to be evolved. It's supposed to know better. So when they're being hurtful and they're doing wrong, they know. But the people of the past didn't. But, 1978 was an innocent time. Superman the movie was the first superhero blockbuster. And oh boy, did Richard Donner get it right at the first attempt. It united people. It wasn't attempting to make any political statements. It wasn't trying to tell you left is better than right or right's better than left. It wasn't political at all. It didn't matter about your politics. It didn't matter if you're black, white, a native, Latino. Everyone sat around that cinema screen, or in my case, I sat around with my brother, my mum, and my dad, and I was shaking my dad. Oh my God, Dad, are they going to find out that Clark Kent's Superman? So excited as a very small boy. That's the different world that I grew up in. And Superman is an example of that innocent society. An innocent society that we've lost because we're not innocent anymore. We're hateful and we want to divide, and we rather put a hateful comment on social media than spreading a positive message. That's something I learned from having, platforms on social media. You get more hate than love, and I do get love, and I appreciate the people who give me love. I don't expect everyone to agree with me, and just because you disagree with me, I don't call you a hater like some fools do. You've got to be able to take criticism, right? And I take criticism on the chin and try and improve my behaviour via that criticism. But I am Mick Meanus. I can only be Mick Meanus. This is who I am. I'm not Chris Wong Svensson. I'm not I'm not the movie junkie or whatever you call him. I'm not Pinar. I'm not this one. I'm not Grace Randolph. I am me. I succeed and fail by being me. Right now, I am failing on YouTube from being me, but that's okay. I love the sound of my own voice. I love talking about entertainment, and I will continue to talk about entertainment. So I find it utterly problematic that a progressive has a handle on Superman. Let me tell you again, I am not political. I'm neither with the left or the right. I don't believe in the system. I'm more an anarchist than a believer of this shitty system. It's shit. It doesn't work. It pretty much shits on the small person, and it's all about hypocrisy. If you want to see hypocrisy, look at the extreme left and what they try and tell you. That men are bad, women are good, whites are bad, blacks are good. It's always trying to divide people. You can just see it in their filmmaking. So basically you have to look at people, especially in life, and when you're writing characters and stories, you can't write people as part of a box. You've got to look at everyone individually. One straight white male may be one thing, and then another straight white male will be another thing. So you look at a black person, right? One black person may be this, and another black person may be that. When we start stereotyping everyone, progressive Hollywood always talks about bad stereotypes, but they are quite happy to give straight white males bad stereotypes. Their hypocrisy is never lost on me. So I am not, let's just put it this way. I'm sure James Gunn can write and direct a really good Superman movie to a point. I think his fanboys and girls will love it. It will have gags. It will do this. It will do that. But is he the right person? Is he the best person for the job? Out of everyone in the entertainment industry, is he the one you would have chosen to maneuver Superman in the 21st century? He wouldn't have been my first choice. He would never have been my first choice because I don't believe he has any love for Superman. He has knowledge of comic books, right? And this Janier, he understands it. He grew up reading comics. There's no question about it. But is Superman in his heart? Does he believe in what the character stands for? I don't believe he does. We look at a latest Superman graphic novel where you have Superman pissing off to space while his, bisexual son takes the center stage. And most of that story is really about his relationship with this guy. So there's nothing wrong with being bisexual. There's nothing wrong with Superboy, stroke the new Superman, being bisexual. But that's the point of that story. To get rid of Superman and say, well, the next Superman's bisexual now. Because that's as far as their imagination takes them. Identity politics. That's what it's all about in the end. And rewriting history. That's all they are interested in, boys and girls. They're not interested in feeding the starving, clothing the homeless, giving the homeless a home. They don't talk about that anymore. Now, people from my generation, like Sir Bob Geldof, used to talk about charity. He fed the third world, right? How many celebrities have done what the straight white male in Sir Bob Geldof did to help people in the third world? Nothing, because they don't believe in it anymore. So these are the kind of people running our entertainment today with their extremist messaging. And they are destroying our beautiful industry. They have taken our industry away from us and we want it back. Is it even possible to get the industry back to what it was, making pure, sweet, brilliant entertainment? The old-fashioned Disney animated movies, beautiful. The old Looney Tune cartoons, beautiful. When you look at the modern day Disney Pixar films and the overt, extremist messaging within them, right? And how, isn't it interesting how Lightyear failed and Minions: The Rise of Gru succeeded. Puss in Boots succeeded because they weren't pushing any ulterior motives from the right or the left. They were just trying to make good, pure, sweet entertainment. The kind of pure, sweet entertainment I grew up with. So if you ask me, do I have this? Am I relaxed about James Gunn running Superman? No, I am not. I couldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. I like him as a creative. I think he can make some really good entertainment fare, but there's one thing to be in charge of Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad characters and Peacemaker, Grade Z, Y characters. But Superman is the peak. And the ideal of the Superman character, as I say, is the representation of the old-fashioned good man. It's something these people with their extremist political views don't like to represent. So if you really think he's going to cast a straight white male and make him a good man, you've got another thing coming. The only way this guy will be motivated to make Superman who he's always been is to cast a minority actor in the lead role. And I've told you my suspicions about that. If he wants to cast a black man as President Superman, fine. If he wants to cast a black man as Val Zod, if he wants these two to be his Superman, I'm perfectly fine with that. But if he wants to take Clark Kent and and cast a minority actor, that is pure wrong when you've got other, Supermen of color in the comics. I don't know if there's a Latino Superman in the comics as well. Make one up, right? But leave Clark Kent alone and keep Clark Kent the pure gentleman he's always been. Because if you're talking about toxic masculinity, and if you believe Superman is part of toxic masculinity, you really don't know what you're talking about. So James Gunn is part of the extreme left. When he used to tweet his stuff, his anti-right stuff, this is what happened. This is why he was exposed with his historical tweets. Because the right came out and said, right, you're winding us up. You're a successful filmmaker. You're going at us. You're being ultra political. We're going to teach you a lesson. And they did. And they exposed him. And it also exposes the hypocrisy of all political people. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or from the right. They're all hypocrites. They don't believe in picking someone up off the floor. That's the thing, right? And that's my politics, right? If I'm political at all, if I see someone on the floor, I'm going to give them my hand. That's where I stand politically. But we shouldn't be talking about politics and what a director and a writer, how they swing politically. But that's where we are today. So that's who James Gunn is. And this is why I don't trust him to make the Superman that I want to see. The traditional Superman. The traditional good man. Because this generation sees the traditional good man as dull and boring. And that's another issue as well. What is this guy going to give us in terms of Superman? I have no damn idea. But I have every right to be concerned about what he's going to give us. We know what Snyder gave us as Superman. And it's interesting. I think there's been lots of interesting attempts. We've had the Dean Cain Superman. But I do believe that Richard Donner's Superman the movie and Alfred Gough and Miles Miller's Smallville are the best interpretations in live action of this character. Really faithful adaptations. Now, Smallville did take liberties with the canon, but Smallville never took liberties with the character that Clark Kent was. He was absolutely this pure-hearted hero, as Christopher Reeve's Superman and Clark Kent was in Superman the movie. Absolutely pure and with good storytelling. And They're the best versions in live action. No one has even got close to that, because Gotham Millers and Donners and Mankiewicz, who wrote Superman the movie after all, and he did a great fucking job, you know, were the ones who believe in the myth of Superman. I don't believe James Gunn believes in the myth. I don't believe James Gunn believes in the old-fashioned gentleman, because he's part of an extremist political movement, as are most of Hollywood today. What's happened in Hollywood, the inmates have taken over the asylum, so this is how you get Mindy Kaling's Thelma. This is how you get to a stage that you're at today. And there's everyone who's consuming entertainment today is at each other's throat, because it's become ultrally political. It's no longer about entertainment. Within Zack Snyder, he was telling a story about these characters in the real world, and there was a semblance of politics in it, but it wasn't strong and in your face. Mostly, he was, yes, he is subversive. Snyder is absolutely subversive, and I said it before. You know, if you want to make $1 billion a picture, don't have a subversive writer-director making this content. He can be somewhere doing that, but centrally, they had no place bringing Snyder in to that. And that was down to Nolan, because they put Nolan in charge, because Nolan's mate, Goya, who had, you know, was his partner with the Dark Knight trilogy, had an idea for a Superman alien invasion story that ended up being Man of Steel. And so this is where we are today. Now, you would imagine that James Gunn is more of the fault of making Superman an inspirational character, and I really hope that he is. It will be interesting what he does with him. Do I trust him? Do I have no doubts about what he's going to do? I don't trust him, and I am concerned about, as I say, a progressive like James Gunn doing Superman. Now let's move on to Todd Phillips' Joker sequel, Joker Folie à Deux. It has the working title of Juliet, and the first film had the working title of Romeo. As I predicted before this sequel was even announced, I said that Todd Phillips would continue his, his Elseworld DC Black Label villain stories, and that Harley Quinn would be his next project. This may be called Joker Folie à Deux. Maybe he'll change that title eventually, I don't know. But this is a movie about Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. But this, my friends, is about the true Harley Quinn, not the fake Harley Quinn that James Gunn gave you, not the fake Harley Quinn you saw on Birds of Prey, right? Or not the fake Harley Quinn who's now dating Poison Ivy in the graphic novels. I wonder why they have her all of a sudden dating another woman. How convenient, and the progressive fans love it. Poison Ivy, Harley, all the artwork, isn't it beautiful? Not in Todd Phillips' movie. That's not what's going to happen here. What you're going to get is a true romance. Remember True Romance starring Christian Slater, right? I forgot the other actress who was in it, right? But that kind of thing. It's going to be these two fucking nut jobs in a violent, aggressive, toxic relationship. This is why people have always been invested in the Joker and Harley. It's why the first Suicide Squad movie nearly made $800 million, because they were going to, we thought we were going to get a deep dive into that relationship. We got a little bit of a dive into that relationship. It was kind of interesting. And I think this film from Todd Phillips is going to take a deeper dive, but it's really going to honour what Bruce Timm did with Harley in the Batman animated series, and what we've seen in some earlier graphic novels with Harley. What's happened now with Harley is, again, if I want to give you examples of progressive or SJWs and how they think, they've made Harley basically someone who's dating another female. And it works for them because it's a very popular conceit. But there's nothing wrong with a woman dating another woman. That's not what I'm saying. Harley Quinn was originally with Joker. They rewrote history and created that as a toxic relationship that was all the Joker's fault. So she had to find another woman. Couldn't be another man, because we know how much progressives hate straight men. So they took that away and they changed it. So I don't think you're going to get that type of thing in Todd Phillips' kind of world. And I wouldn't be surprised if Todd Phillips is right-wing rather than left, probably a Republican. Again, I don't agree with Republican values mostly. I mean, I would say I'm more centre-left than right. There's no question about that. I believe in compassion and kindness. But let me tell you something about the right wing. I'll say one good thing about them. They never mostly bring their politics into their storytelling. As I say, how many anti-abortion, and I certainly am not anti-abortion, let's get that clear, but how many anti-abortion movies do you see? They resist the urge to bring their politics into their storytelling. Now, the extreme left can't resist the urge into bringing their political worldviews into their storytelling. So, even though I'm not a fan of the right wing, I trust them more to give us great entertainment, because mostly they were the ones giving us great entertainment in the older days, right? So they can resist the urge of doing that, but the extreme left can't. And that's why I have no trust in the extreme left. And plus, progressives hate me and you. They hate men. They hate their own fucking customers, because predominantly the people who bring them the most money are people like you and me. Now, they don't like to hear that, but we're the real customers, the ones who buy the merch, who go to the cinemas on opening night, right? Who are obsessed about talking about their shit before it comes out. Progressives have turned the industry into things like Filmer and Megan and made it an absolute fucking joke. People like Todd Phillips gave us the Hangover trilogy, and what a beautiful thing that is. And the first Joker movie was great. And this is Harley Quinn's story. So I don't expect her to be, you know, getting on the floor and eating out poison ivy or anything like that. I expect this to be the proper romance between Joker and Harley. Now, you can expect the progressives, like they did with the first Joker, to go absolute apeshit as Todd Phillips. Please do, because you helped the movie reach over $1 billion. So if you're going to get upset about Todd Phillips glorifying a toxic relationship, that's up to you. Please do. Bring it on. We've had great toxic relationships entertain us through our lives. JR and Sue Ellen, Dirty Den and Angie Watts, and all the soaps and soap operas I watched as a kid. There's nothing wrong with that. Most relationships have an element of toxicity in them. That's the real world. But progressives do not live in the real world. They live in a fantasy land where men are bad, women are good, minorities are good, and white people are bad, right? Because white people have never been born and brought up in poverty, have they now? But you see, this is the problem with people who don't live in the real world. And, you know, that's the issue. Now, Todd Phillips doesn't bring his politics into it. He seems to have a compassionate eye, not just for men, but for people all around, and seems to be able to represent women and men equally. So, I tell you something else. While Matt Reeves seems to have to be going to meetings with James Gunn and Peter Safran, have you noticed that Todd Phillips isn't going through any meetings? He hasn't mentioned James Gunn or said anything about James Gunn. Should I tell you why? Do you want to know? Because David Zaslav is fucking obsessed with Todd Phillips, and rightly so. So basically, James Gunn has been told to go nowhere near Todd Phillips. He's going to do whatever the fuck he wants with this movie. Gunn and Safran are not allowed to interfere with it. Now, all DC content will be part of DC Studios. That's the point of having a DC Studios. But Todd Phillips is absolutely working independently of Gunn and Safran. And he reports directly to David Zaslav. And David Zaslav absolutely wanted Todd Phillips to run DC Studios. Clearly, Todd said no, and I don't blame him. But even though I don't think he has a great knowledge or love of DC, he was able to tell a great Joker story, and I expect him to tell a great Harley Quinn story as well. And Lady Gaga, as well as being one of the best vocalists out there today, she's a really, really good artist, a really good actor. And I'm really excited about her casting, and I think what you're going to get is, yes, the Joker we saw in the first Joaquin Phoenix movie isn't like copy and pasted from the comics, but you can see the Joker we know and love being formed in that movie, and this is what you're going to get from Harley, a proper depiction of this character with no political views in it. It's not going to be a movie that tries to depict a woman as perfect, and that's the whole point. So I have more trust of Todd Phillips as a writer-director than I do of James Gunn, because people like Gunn, progressives, allow their politics to get in the way. People like Todd Phillips don't. This has been Sunday's edition of the DC Universe Daily, here on Movies TV Mad with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.